Welcome to Reframed, a podcast created to educate, encourage, and inspire parents and professionals. The Gladney Center for Adoption staff know parenting a child that has a history of loss, abuse, neglect, or trauma requires parenting skills and insight to be reframed in order to create a loving and caring environment. Reframed host Emily Morehead and guests strive to make an impact on our world through topics that are important to you, your family, and our communities. And now, here's your host, Emily Morehead.
Hi, and thanks for tuning in to a special edition of Reframed. Today we're talking about starting your domestic infant adoption process. I'm joined today by Bailey Guthrie and Ashley Whiteside. Ashley, start off by telling us about yourself.
I am currently the manager of our domestic infant program. I've been at Gladney for 14 years, and I'm a licensed master's level social worker in Texas.
Awesome. Ashley, thanks for joining us today. Bailey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am an adoptive mom of a darling little 2-year-old boy, and that we adopted at birth. And my husband and I have not ever been diagnosed with infertility, but we have been on a journey of some ups and downs and some losses along the way.
Awesome. Well, we're so glad that you're here today to share your experience and your journey with our families. Today we're talking about our families, and so many families come to Gladney for so many different reasons and choose adoption as their family building path for so many different reasons. Ashley, can you kind of share a little bit about what our families are experiencing when they walk in our door?
Yeah, a lot of times our families come, like you said, from different paths, different journeys, and we don't always know exactly what the path that they've been on before they walk in our door. But a lot of our families have experienced some sense of loss, or even questions that have never been answered. They don't know why they haven't been able to get pregnant. They're not quite sure that going down the infertility route of in vitro and IUIs and things like that is right for them. And so they walk in here kind of going, we need some guidance, we need some help, and this is the journey that we choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Bailey said, sometimes there's not even a diagnosis of infertility that sparks that decision. Maybe they've always wanted to adopt, or it really could be that they, do look at all of their options, and adoption is one of them, and that's the option that feels like the best option for their family building. So I think when we were writing this training, one of the things that we were talking about was it's really important for our families to acknowledge grief and loss and understand that adoption and the adoption process can sometimes trigger that. And everyone's journey is so different into adoption and why they choose to come into Gladney's doors. But understanding our story and understanding what brought us here today, it's really important, because during the process there can be some things that trigger, or it can cause some heartache, and having dialogue and just being aware that that's normal is so, so important. So Bailey, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey into Gladney's doors.
Sure. So it's not straightforward, to be honest. It's a little bit here, there, and everywhere, but my husband and I always knew we wanted children. And so I think similar to a lot of couples that I've spoken with, he and I were not on the same page in the beginning, and that was really difficult. I was gung-ho about adoption. I was ready. I was there, and he took a little bit more time. But once our hearts were aligned, we knew Gladney was right for us and started the process, and then soon learned that we got pregnant after having not been able to get pregnant leading up to then. So we experienced a loss then, which was devastating for us. I think especially because we'd started on this adoption journey. We were like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're so excited, and we were resolved, and we were just moving forward. And then to have that loss right in the middle was tough. So we took some time off with the process, and then came back and started up again a few months later. So
how did you know that you felt comfortable to start that process? Like, when your heart was so tender from that loss, naturally, how did you know the time was right for you?
There wasn't a moment. I don't think it's ever that you get over that loss. I think that grief is always there. I still grieve the loss of that life, that child. But I think for us, it happened kind of in the middle of the year, and we just we went on a trip, and then we went through the holidays together. And then after the first of the year, we felt refreshed. We felt kind of rejuvenated. We had spent time with our family. So we're just excited, and I think looking forward again. But still, the grief is always there. So.
Absolutely. Ashley, is that pretty typical for our families if they've experienced loss, that there is, kind of a place of just peace and readiness in that movement to move forward with adoption.
Absolutely. There is some sense of a process that is happening in your heart and in your marriage, where you really do have to understand that adoption really only solves one thing in terms of the loss. And so it doesn't solve the loss of pregnancy. It doesn't solve the loss of genetics and biology. But what it does solve is having a family. But you have to have worked through all of those other losses and come to a point where just having a family is the desire, because that's the one loss that adoption can really touch.
Absolutely. Are there times that families use different resources to kind of work through that before they come to that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's wonderful counselors and groups that specifically touch infertility. So Resolve is a great group that you can get involved with, and they have different counselors and resources. But for some, it may just be kind of what Bailey said, is taking some time as a couple and just really exploring, like, what is the main goal of our family, what is our goal as a couple? And I think that just spending some time doing that and communicating can really just be helpful.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what you said, you and Andrew weren't always on the same page, and so getting to that page was helpful in your relationship of knowing and having that confidence.
Right.
So what did that look like when you were like, yes, we're ready?
Well, it was a really difficult time for us, but just such a good time of learning. I learned so much about him, and he learned so much about me. Me figuring out how to not nag him about, like, are you ready? Are you ready? Like, is it now? Sure. But me giving him space, but then him also hearing my heart and trying to work towards kind of our hearts being aligned. But I was trying to figure out, like, are we really supposed to move towards adoption? Are we supposed to stay on this path of trying to get pregnant and figure that out? Because there are a bunch of options, and so trying to figure out what's right and be aligned in that is really difficult. But it grew us really close together, and I remember the day that he was like, "Okay, I'm ready," and then from then on, I felt like we were just in sync and moving forward together. And I think having gone through that helped us with the subsequent losses from there, and just kind of the ups and downs of the whole journey kind of from there.
Absolutely. Did you share with your caseworker anything about, like, here's our history, here's just our background, know this about our grief and loss experience, and here's how we need to be advocated for?
A little bit. I think when we first started the process, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think we were super naive. We were like, we're like ready. And when we started the process, I think we had been through so much waiting and unknown and figuring out or whatever to get there that I felt like we had arrived. It was like, we're going to start and it's going to be smooth sailing. And, you just think that because it's like, we finally gotten here, And so we'd shared a little bit of that waiting and longing and that desire. But it really wasn't until our journey kind of kicked off with Gladney that a lot of those ups and downs and of infant loss, of miscarriage happened. And so we had to communicate with our caseworker along the way, and her kind of figuring out what we needed and us figuring out what we needed alongside. It just kind of is a process we did together.
Absolutely. Ashley, what do you see with families? Like, what is typically, how can they communicate with their caseworker? Here's our history, here's where we're from, and here's how communicating with us is optimal, and here is, let's merge these two, our story and our journey together, and make that work.
I think what Bailey said is so true, in the sense that when you get to that point in the process, you're just so excited because you've possibly been through so much unknown, and finally you have a sense of direction. And so you come with such excitement that I think a lot of times families don't recognize or even know what they will feel during the process. So they don't know to communicate that when things get hard, this is what I need, because you're just so excited at that point. But it's so valuable if families are comfortable talking to their caseworker about what they've experienced, because that caseworker really is there in a sense to guard you on some level. And so they can say, this situation is in front of me, but I know Bailey and Andrew, and I know their hearts, and I know what they've been through, a loss. They've been through a current loss. This may not be the right time for them. Those sort of things where a caseworker can really kind of help safeguard your heart just a little bit. If you communicate with them, if you're very open with them and let them know, like, I'm having a really hard month. But I don't think, like I said, families don't know that they're going to experience that. And so I think when they do start to experience that, they don't really know what to do with that. I didn't know that I would feel so vulnerable.
And that can be embarrassing. I mean, that you're having this reaction and you don't normally react that way, right? And now you're like on the phone with your caseworker kind of being rude, or, having this emotional moment that you did not expect, and it's knocking you down. And so I think just being aware that, like, we are all humans and that's okay, and you can experience that. Ashley, when do you see with families that sometimes adoption can trigger infertility? When are those bumps that happen during their journey?
So once again, I think families are so excited that you don't consider that there are some pretty equal losses. Okay. And that's, I've heard families describe that there are different times in the process that almost feels just like a loss to them if they've experienced a miscarriage. And so, obviously one of those huge ones to consider are being matched with a expectant mom and her child, and then she changes her mind and decides to parent that child. I mean, for so many people, that feels exactly like a miscarriage to them. They were planning, they had told their family members, maybe people had thrown them a baby shower. So they have to grieve that loss just the same as any other loss. But for some people, even when their profile book goes out, that's an exciting time. I mean, this is kind of what, like, you've been waiting for. She's going to see our book, maybe we'll get picked. Like, it's the greatest point. And you start to create a story in your head of this is going to be our child. And then for your caseworker to call you and say, unfortunately, she chose another family, can just take people on this really heavy roller coaster ride. It's up and down. It's really emotional. And that's the thing that I think people are kind of like, whoa, this, I didn't know it was going to feel like this. That's where I think people get a little emotional, and they didn't recognize that they would.
So I heard a knowing sigh from you, Bailey. So tell me what that was like for you.
So much of what you said actually resonates with me. I can remember so much of those emotions. And we did have, obviously we had a bunch of profile showings before we were actually matched. And every time, yes, especially when you hear a name, of an expectant mom, and you hear a story, I think it's only human to connect with that. And like, I'm so guilty of trying to write my story before my story is written, or before I see it kind of play out, where I kind of connect the dots, and I'm like, oh, this is the one because of this, and it's so-and-so's birthday, and all those things.
I think our families do that a lot.
Yeah, and it's hard not to do that, because every one you think, oh, this is the one, whereas looking back, I wish I would have known, okay, your profile can be shown a dozen or more times before it's actually the one. And so I really learned this whole process how to manage my own expectations and just kind of live and be present and not take anything for more than it is. We also had 2 failed matches where we were chosen by an expectant mom twice, and both times we traveled to be there, and it was emotional, and we really thought it was it, And again, I think we got kind of the cart before the horse, and it is a loss, and it's devastating because it's a shattered hope, it's a shattered dream that you think is going to be reality, and you think that's going to be your child. And so, while it's not the actual loss of a life, it is really devastating to go through. And we kind of just had to pick ourselves up each time that happened. And I remember feeling like we were restarting each time. Like I had to take this big deep breath and feel like which is not true, but I felt like I was starting over every time. It's like, oh, this didn't work. Okay, now we're like starting over. But that's just the roller coaster. That's the ups and downs of it all. And frankly, for us, I feel weird saying it now, but on the other side, I'm grateful, so grateful for those experiences, especially the 2 failed matches, because we were able to see so clearly the heart of an expectant mom, a birth mom. And while that was really difficult for us to walk away empty-handed and to drive 11 hours home and have an empty car seat when we got home, it's her choice, it's her life. And so it's like grief and joy at the same time. You're cheering for her, and it's her choice, but it's also a loss for you, and you have to kind of step forward from there. But
How did you and Andrew grieve? Was that the same? Was it different? How did you take care of yourself during that time?
We grieve very differently. We always have, and we do now. But we learned so much about each other during that process and how to support each other. I'm a very emotional person, very much more up and down, and I feel all the things, and I want to talk through, like, externally, like, process through all the things. And Andrew is really like an internal self-soother, and he doesn't need to talk through everything, and he really didn't feel the same emotions I did, which is fine. And I think a lot of couples are like that, you know, somebody's a little bit more this way, you know, you're more kind of a, you're a little bit different, complementary, if you will. But he learned to kind of meet me where my emotions were and to just be in it with me. I told him that so many times. I know you don't feel what I feel, but I just want you to be in it with me, just like sit with me. And then other times I had to learn that I can't expect him to feel the same thing, you know? And so we did it together, but we had to do it in our own separate ways and just kind of hold hands through it, you know?
Absolutely. And I'm sure that presence and understanding from both of you, like, here's my needs, sit down in it, it's hard. And like you said, through the other side, obviously, you know, you have your son and that's wonderful, but there was pain in that journey, and acknowledging both, I think, is so important.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you ever feel like this path isn't working? Like, we need to, this maybe just isn't our path after your 2 losses or after, you know, the time has gone by. Did you ever think, maybe this isn't our journey?
That's a good question. I don't know as we ever got there, but I remember times of such confusion. And, like, I was mad because we had, like, a ride. It was like, we're going down this path. We have this direction. We're going to adopt. We had talked about it. I felt like our family was supportive, like we were just kind of in a really good place of movement, and we were like doing the thing. And then to have this hope of a pregnancy or hope of a match or whatever, just to be let down, it's like, what are we doing? Like, is this ever going to actually work? Is, I think, where we got to. And so sometimes that felt lower. It felt like, I don't know if this is ever going to work. And other times it was motivating. I remember coming back from our second failed match. The first one, we really need to, like, recover. But then the second one, I felt like, let's go. Like even more motivated almost, because we had learned a lot and we were just like, we were ready to go. So I think it varied, you know?
So even each experience could be different for someone.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. Is that pretty much typical for what you see for our families?
Honestly, everybody experiences this in so many different ways. I mean, kind of exactly what you've said. I've seen people experience a birth mother parenting, and you're right, it is motivating. It was, gosh, we were so close, and we recognized that we were ready. Like, we are ready to go, and we are in it. And so please, like, whatever we need to do to keep the momentum going, please show our profile, that sort of thing. And then we see other families who really have to take some time and once again kind of move through that grief and loss process that they have before. I mean, it's, like I said, I think that until they are in it and experience it, they had no idea that they were going to be feeling, that they would be re-triggered. And so they're back to those losses that they experienced before. They're right back in it emotionally. And so we do have families that need to pull back and for a month, 2 months, who literally say, like, we can't take phone calls right now. You know, we don't need to be receiving emails about different events and things like that. We don't want that, you know, we don't need those things. So we have families that do both.
And for us, I think it, again, you don't know really till you're in it. And it's not like we had never done it before. And so we figured it out along the way. And I remember learning what I needed to communicate to our caseworker. Because before it was like, in theory, you're asked, like, oh, you know, do you want us to call you before and tell you we're going to show your profile? Or do you not want to know? And all those things. And I learned what I needed along the way. So after a few profile showings, it's like, you know, you figure out, is it more difficult for you to hear the name of the expectant mom, or does that give you something to hold on to and to pray about or think about or whatever the case may be? Is that better or worse? And I don't think you can know until you're in it. Maybe some do, but we sure didn't. We had to figure it out along the way.
So Bailey, you were so intentional during your weight process. So you really were intentional in educating your family about the adoption process. Tell me about that.
We decided pretty early on, again, Andrew and I are very different. So he was pretty, he's just a lot more conservative and kind of a little bit more private than I am, but I'm just a very open person. And I decided for me, it feels better to share and to be open. I mean, to our family and our close friends, yes, but even on social media and otherwise, to be very open about it. And for me, that was super helpful to personally kind of keep the darkness away and to maintain hope. And because it kind of, that darkness and that difficulty kind of loses its power whenever you talk about things and you share it and bring things to light. So that was really a gift to me to be able to share. But then also educating our family and friends, using correct adoptive language that, again, we were no experts, nor are we now. But as we learned, talking about an expectant mom and how, we hope to know her and we're praying for her, or when our child comes along, kind of what we're learning, how to best advocate for them, or what Gladney resources are in place and stuff like that. So I wasn't intentionally educating anybody, but I think it really helped on the back end to not just be like, hey, surprise, here's our child, and now here's how we want everybody to kind of talk about it, and here's kind of our expectations of how we raise our child through adoption. Sharing throughout the way kind of helped.
So Bailey, when you shared that you used the online platforms to talk about your adoption and you talked with your family, did you ever battle with any shame triggers with that, of like people saying, oh, your child is so lucky, or like how could an expectant mom ever choose adoption? Did you ever struggle with that, and if so, what did that look like?
Oh my goodness, so much. We struggled a lot with that and kind of still do. I feel like people's reactions to you sharing that you are planning to adopt, you're hoping to adopt, or you have adopted, it's just a mixed bag. And people are well-intentioned, but even in that space, people just say the darndest things, So I feel like that it's either like this savior mentality, like good for you, like you're adopting, like you're saving a child kind of thing, which never has made sense to us, nor is it any of our intentions when we're trying to expand our family and love people, and like our son is our child, we didn't save him. He didn't say, it's just, that's how he came to our family. We shared, we're planning to adopt, we're excited, and it's kind of like oh, okay, but that's great. Like that's great. Like a second best, like encouraging us that it's okay. It's like, no, we know it's okay. And we're excited about it, And so that was hard. And I think it's difficult while sharing was really good for us. It was difficult when our journey was still kind of writing itself and playing out to field some of that stuff and figure out how to navigate, narrate, put words to our journey. And then even now on the back end, I'm still learning how to kind of stand up for my son and our family and say, no, we didn't save him, or no, adoption isn't second best, or whatever, in a really loving way.
There's, an expectant parent who's looking at your information and you've shown your profile book, and a lot of things about, maybe some of the hardships that they could have gone through. How do you protect your child's story while also, like you said, Bailey, like educating and empowering through your journey? What does that look like for families?
So, one of the things we know is that our expectant parents, typically they come from some hard places. And while those things are important for your base knowledge and for you to have in your child's history, that's not exactly the items that your birth mom wants you to think about when you think of her. She wants you to remember that she's funny and that she's really smart and she's really creative. She doesn't necessarily want to talk about some of these decisions that she's made along the way that have brought her to this point. And so those are super important for you to know, but really we want you to just honor her. And so a lot of times when family or friends who might not even never have gotten a chance to meet her, and if you were to share those things, then those are the things that are going to define her to them. And then you don't want those things to then define how they look at your child.
Absolutely.
You know so much more about Wyatt's birth mom that other people in your life will never meet her. But if you were to just give the factual background, then people might be a little colored by that. And so it's just really important that you share what is, basically for me, share things that will honor your child and honor your birth mother. And then people can just embrace your child in love. And also, don't share things that your child doesn't know yet. I mean, how upsetting would it be if somebody approached your child with some information that they don't even know about themselves yet or about their parent? That would be devastating. So it's just really important that you are the keeper of their story until you guys figure out when the right time is, who to share it with, who you can trust, that that's not going to change their perception of your adoption, of your child. All of those things are really important to consider.
I mean, it's a lot to consider, and it's a lot to embrace and to just change about. It's a different family culture even to be an adoptive family, which is really exciting. There's resources needed for that. Ashley, talk to me about what those are.
One of the things that Bailey said, I mean, it's like there's a lot of people in your life, family members and stuff, who don't understand adoption. A lot of people still think of adoption as a very old, antiquated system. They don't understand the openness associated with adoption. So there is a lot of resources out there to just help educate your families so that you can get the support that you need. So that you're not just kind of in a vacuum. So where Andrew and Bailey are not the only two people that can talk about this. You want to have people in your life that you can go to, that you can hopefully can be a support system to you. So there's different books that will help not only educate your family and friends. There's wonderful resources out there for that. We have Gladney family associations that if you need people to say, you went through this a year ago, and I need you to hold my hand while I go through this. They're a wonderful resource for people that have said, like, we've been through this, we want to support you, we want to help you, we can get through this together. So if that's something that you feel like you need, that's a wonderful resource. Once again, Resolve is a great resource as well for people who may need to seek out some support. It is not uncommon for people in this process to feel like they need to check in with a counselor, with somebody that they trust, to say, I didn't anticipate feeling this way, and now I'm kind of back in that place. So, and there is no shame in that in this process. We recommend that. So there's a lot of resources out there to really help support you during this process.
So Bailey, what advice would you give to a family who is starting the adoption journey?
I would say to expect to have some ups and downs and to expect to wait. And I know you're told that, but I think we felt like it would go faster than it did. And I think we thought that it would be smooth sailing and not very rocky. And I wish that someone had told me that we were still going to have some ups and downs and then it was going to be hard. But gosh, it ends up the way that it's supposed to. And there truly is hope in the end. And our hope is this little boy that we have. And I cannot imagine any other way. I can't imagine having the family that we have, the extended family that we have now with our son's birth mom and birth father. We love them like family, and I'm so thankful that my prayers and my hopes weren't answered in the way that I wanted them to be in those moments, you know, those tough moments, but it worked out exactly the way, it's cliche, but it works out exactly the way that it's supposed to, and kind of your hope arrives exactly when it's supposed to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for sitting with me and sharing your heart and your journeys and experience. It's so valuable to our families who are starting this process and just wonder what it looks like. And so I'm so grateful for your time and for your heart. Thanks again for joining us on this special episode of Reframed. All of the resources that we've discussed today are located in your show notes. If you're interested in starting your domestic infant adoption process, check out gladney.org and go to Get Started Now. We're happy to walk through this journey with you, and we're available for any questions or concerns that you may have. Thanks for tuning in today.
Thanks for listening to the Reframed podcast. Be sure to visit gladneyuniversity.org to access the show notes and discover upcoming trainings at Gladney University. We'd love your feedback, so please head to iTunes and rate, review, and subscribe. Until next time.